Good evening, gents. This is GeekRocket back in action after a very long hiatus. Feels like a couple decades since I made my last video. I think the last one I made was about May 2015, so we're going on three and a half years. At that time, I did take a definite step back from the YouTube community and hobbying altogether. Sort of lost my mojo back in May of 2015, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to keep up with a lot of what you guys have been posting on YouTube and on Google+. Google+, I've heard, is actually shutting down, so we're going to have to come up with an alternative for that. Just recently I've been posting a little bit of stuff. I think some of you guys have definitely seen what I've been up to on Google+ the last few weeks, I think. It's been an extremely busy last few years. And it's kind of like that old wives' tale that goes a little something like this, where at some point in a hobbyist's life they sort of take a step back from the hobby to focus on more personal matters. And basically, in a nutshell, it's boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, boy moves out of parents' house, and now boy's engaged to said girl. So that's kind of what's been going on for the last few years. And doing some traveling to the States, and did a big trip this past summer to Europe. So that's basically what I've been up to over the last few years. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to kind of keep up with the guys I used to follow a lot back then. I have been keeping up as much as I can. You guys may have started seeing me to comment more frequently on some of your old videos, probably looking back to spring of this year. So definitely looking to get more involved with commenting and making sure I'm up to date with where you guys are in your projects. Now, even though I've kind of definitely taken a solid step back from the hobby, it doesn't mean I've been totally dark. I have been working on a few projects. Fortunately, just like how I am, I haven't finished anything. It's typical GeekRocket. But I have completed a build on Trumpeter's T-62 Model T60, as you can see in the background here. Finally completed construction, and it's actually ready for primer and paint. So that's what I'll be talking to you guys about today. We'll be doing a post-construction debrief on the build and how it all went together and whatnot, and the modifications that I made to it. Since making this has been the main project that I've been focusing on over the last few years when I've had some spare time. I've totally fallen in love with totally have a huge affinity now for Cold War era Soviet vehicles, armored personnel carriers, as well as main battle tanks, and particularly the T-62 and T-54-55 series of main battle tank. I have a couple T-54-55s in the stash. Haven't built any of them up yet, but that will definitely be coming up in the future. So yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. I know I'm waffling on a little bit here, but hope everyone's in good health, and we're coming up to the Christmas holiday season, so hopefully everyone has a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But enough waffling. Let's get back into the trenches, and we'll talk about this kit. And here's the completed build. Very pleased with how this build turned out. This is probably one of the most detailed builds that I've done to date. This is also the first Trumpeter kit that I've completed, and it was actually very fun to put together. It was a pretty straightforward build kit-wise. It was actually very reminiscent of Tamiya kits, whereby the instructions are clear, concise, and easy to follow, and you basically just shake the box and out falls a model tank. This also comes from a long lineage of T-62 kits that Trumpeter provides. I believe it's the 12th or 13th T-62 in Trumpeter's line of said tank. Having said that, in my opinion, the only drawback of this kit is actually the quality and level of detail. The level of detail certainly wasn't to my liking, which is why I've gone ahead and added a myriad of different updates and added details. I'm certainly not a rivet counter by any means, but the level of detail that I added to this kit may say otherwise. But we'll talk about detailing a little later on. So in preparation for priming and base coating, what I've done is I've separated the steel wheels from the rubber road wheels, and as you can see here, I've done some scuffing and some minor nicks and damages to the sides of the rubber road wheels to give it a nice worn look. I think it'll look really nice once it's all weathered and painted up. And I've decided to actually attach this to, well, not attach it, but right now it's just press fit on some rolled up paper. Hopefully this will ease the painting process of these road wheels. And then with the steel wheels being masked off, it should allow cementing them together should be seamless. So that's where we stand right now. Let's jump into discussing some of the modifications and detail sets that I've used to liven this T-62 up. So the first modification that I've done, not necessarily enhancing any detail, but I decided to leave off the fuel tanks. There should be 2 fuel tanks attached to the rear of the vehicle, and all I had to do here was I've literally shaved off the metal support plates that the fuel arms would have bolted into. And so I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I've actually hollowed out the 3 bolt points, left that there, and then I've also actually added some weld seams on either side of this, which is how it would actually render in real life. So that wasn't necessarily adding detail, with the exception of the weld seams, but something that I decided to do to modify it just to give it a unique look, so the fuel cans won't be showing on this vehicle. Now, one of the first items that I decided to update and actually go aftermarket on were the tracks, and the kit provided tracks. Unfortunately, they are pretty detailed. Like, they look really well done. However, there's 4 attachment points, and there's actually there's sink marks in between the teeth here, which, to be honest, you're not really going to see after it's painted and weathered up. If you have any sort of mud or even dust on there, you probably wouldn't see it. But the 4 attachment points per link really turned me off of these. So I decided to replace the kit provided tracks with Friulmodel tracks, which are white metal tracks. In this case, this is ATL01, which is good for T54, 55, 62. And I was extremely pleased with the quality of these tracks. Yes, they are fairly expensive. They're actually just as, if not more expensive than the actual kit. But as you can see, once they're all built up, it's fully workable, really easy to paint and weather, and the construction was very simple. I've heard guys complain, and one of the downfall that you can have with these tracks is that the maintenance and cleanup is a little tedious. For me and for these tracks, it was basically just sticking your pin vise in the pinhole. Just drill it out. You really only need to make 1 pass, and then you basically super glue in each of the track pins, sand it down just a tad, and you're good to go. I mean, it's no muss, no fuss, and at the end of the day, you have really super detailed track links that will provide any sag that you wish for any vehicle, because there's a tons of these tracks for a multitude of vehicles on the market now. Next, we will be looking at the Fender and Fuel Tank set from Legend Productions. highly recommended kit. This added an immense amount of detail that, in my opinion, is an absolute must. The T-62 has the very unique fuel tank, or very iconic, sorry, not unique because it's on the T-54 and 55 as well. But very iconic fuel tanks, and the kit was actually lacking any of the fuel line detail, as well as the nuts and bolts and the attachment points. Also the fender support struts, which, let's see if we can get you a zoomed in shot here. The fender support struts, which are these pieces right here, were extremely thick for the kit provided ones, and they're actually all molded into one piece along the fender. So there was a little bit of removal there, which, as you can see on this side, I actually did a bit of a hack job. I had to fill that in. There was very minor filling on this kit as a whole. But this added an immense amount of detail, in my opinion, where you have the exact structure of how these were seated in place. The fuel lines are really nice, all in scale. The fuel tanks themselves were actually incorrect in the kit provided ones, so this is also included in the Fender and Fuel set by Legend Productions, and they're actually more accurate than the kit provided ones as well. This is also a resin piece here, resin here, and the oil can on this side here is also resin. But again, you can see all of the strut detail and the attachment point detail. The nuts and bolts are all separate, but it just adds an immense amount of detail, in my opinion, which makes this kit as a whole just pop that much more. And at the end of this video, like I might have already mentioned, I will be adding some detail shots of all the modifications and updates that I made to this kit. So if the video is not really showing well, don't worry. Also, they've included some conduit. Oops. Some conduit for the vision ports, as well as actually the vision ports themselves are also resin. So I removed the kit molded, and they were molded in, which was a little difficult, but well worth it. And yeah, as for the moving on to the headlight guards, let's actually remove the turret. So the headlight guard, as you can see here, this was created using 24 gauge copper wire, which you can pick up at any hardware or Michaels store, like art store. And this was my first shot at doing some soldering. So I replaced the kit provided plastic ones. The styrene ones were way too thick in my opinion, and I thought to myself, you know what, this will be a great first opportunity to try out some soldering, and I'm really pleased with how it came out, and I think it adds just that authentic feel of in-scale thickness of how they should be done. Also, the kit provided light guards were actually inaccurate in shape, so I've actually created the correct profile using the copper wire instead. And last but not least, the last modification that I made to this kit, increased the detail and level of the weld seams, which you can see here. I've added it to a select areas where it was needed, on the grab handles, on the lift supports, as well as some of the fender area as well. And this was actually created using 2-part resin epoxy. And the manufacturer that I used was Magic Sculpt. Oops. So 2 parts in equal parts hardener and resin, and it's really easy to use. Basically just grab two equal portions of each, roll them together until they're a uniform color. You can use gloves or your fingers. Using your fingers, you'll obviously add your fingerprints to it. and you basically just want to get some water and roll it out into a really thin line. Then you just start adding it and molding it to the shape of the vehicle in the areas that you want. And the way I created the weld texture is I used a Dremel tool, and I actually had to hollow out and shape a needle, just using a needle, just a standard syringe needle, into this very unique shape where you're able to easily and quickly get yourself a nice weld texture. And the weld seams that are depicted on the vehicle there are like pristine welds, so it's not like you know, typical Russian World War II where it was really rushed. So this is what you would find in a you know, somebody taking their time to do the weld seams on this vehicle. And because it's Cold War, it's not necessarily wartime, so that's the story behind that. Before I forget, I forgot to show you guys the Legend Productions instruction sheet. Well thought out, easy to follow pictorial instructions. It points out clearly all the resin parts, the conduit sizes, as well as the PE parts that are included in the kit. I know with some resin and update sets, sometimes they're black and white and sometimes they're ambiguous. They're very hard to follow, and sometimes actually even leave out parts. But this leaves not too much to the imagination. Very straightforward and easy to follow. It's a very highly recommended update set that I think is an integral part to any of the T-62 model kits out on the market today. So in finishing up this video, I'll leave you guys with a couple shots of, or 360 shots of the completed model kit. And then we'll end off with a slideshow showing more close-up and detail shots of the build. So that wraps up this video. Thanks again for checking my channel out and watching the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. The next update on this particular vehicle, you'll see the tank all base coated in a Russian green. I will actually be using MIG's MIG acrylic color. I'm not even going to actually try to pronounce that, but you can look that up at MIG Ammo. It's number 83. This should provide a nice authentic green color to the 1960s and 70s era. So considering this is a model 1960, I think this will do the tank real justice. Yeah, so like I said, thanks again guys, and I'll catch you on the next update.